In this video series, I'll be walking you through how I created this interactive dashboard. All of this was done using Cordo, GitHub Actions, and GitHub Pages. It was completely free to create and to host, and all the interactivity that you see here is powered by observable JavaScript, without the need for a Shiny server. This dashboard displays the Today's Top Hits playlist from Spotify, and is automatically updated every day at 9 a.m. without me needing to do anything at all. I never have to render any of this code locally, since GitHub Actions takes care of everything for me. And the code is 100% reproducible, because this project uses renv to manage all the R packages and package versions. I created this dashboard as my submission for Posit's 2024 table contest, and my idea with my submission was to combine as many different tricky components as possible into one Cordo project. Throughout this series, we'll talk about how to create and style Cordo dashboards, how to publish them for free using GitHub Pages, and how to automatically update them on a schedule of your choosing using GitHub Actions, how to include passwords and other confidential information as part of your GitHub Actions workflows, how to use observable.js to add interactivity to your dashboards, how to use the httr2 package to access APIs, and of course, how to use the GT package to create beautiful, interactive tables. This playlist contains 7 videos, and in this series, we'll build up this dashboard step by step from scratch. I've designed this playlist, though, in such a way that each topic has its own video that's fully self-contained. That means that you don't need to watch all 7 of the videos in this playlist in order to get value out of the video that you're currently watching. If you do watch all 7, though, you'll be able to completely reproduce this dashboard, and you'll also have all the tools you need to create a similar project of your own. My name is Melissa Van Bussel, and I make videos about R programming and data science. If you find these tutorials helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel, since it really helps me make more videos. Without further ado, let's jump into this video's topic. In this video, we'll be learning how to access Spotify data in R using the Spotify API. The first thing that you'll want to do is Google for the Spotify web API. You'll be taken to this page which says log into the dashboard using your Spotify account. If you've never used the API before, you'll click on Create App, give it a name, and for this example, we'll just be using the web API. This is the most straightforward one. Confirm that you understand the terms of service. You're also required to provide a description and a redirect URI. And for what we'll be doing, you can type in http://localhost, click on Save, and then go to Settings. And from here, you'll be able to access your client ID and your client secret. You're going to want to store both your client ID and your client secret as environment variables that you can access in R. If you're working locally, you can put that directly inside of an R environ file using this format here. Or if you followed along with previous videos in this playlist and you're interested in accessing the Spotify API using R from GitHub Actions, then you would need to modify the bottom of the publish.yml file to include an environment variable for the client ID and the client secret. For example, if I call this Spotify client ID, and then change this to my client ID, this one would be client secret, my secret, and then from here, if you're using the GitHub Actions approach, you would go to the repository on GitHub where you want to be able to access those variables, and then go to Settings, Secrets and Variables, Actions, and then under Repository Secrets, click on New Repository Secret, and make sure you call them the same thing as what you wrote beside the word secrets. The first one is going to be called my client ID, and I would paste in my client ID from here. I'm also going to create one for the my client secret, and then I would click this button and copy the value from here, and then paste it into this box and click on Add Secret. Once those repository secrets are defined, you would be able to access those values inside your R scripts in GitHub Actions by using the sys.getEnv function. Since we're running this locally, I've gone ahead and defined those values in my .renviron file. And now if I want to be able to access those variables locally, I can use the sys.getEnv function and type the name of the variable that I'd like to access. And this is my Spotify client ID. I'm going to erase some of the placeholder content that I had previously put inside this document. And now that we've defined those environment variables, we're ready to start accessing the Spotify API. We're going to be using the httr2 package. So we'll start by loading that. And if you don't have that package installed, you'll need to install it first. I'm using renv for this project, so I'll need to specify that I want this package to be installed for this project specifically. So I'll type Y to confirm that, and then I will also update the snapshot of the packages that are being recorded by renv. Now we can define our client ID and our client secret in order to generate a Spotify access token. So I'm going to create a variable called client ID, and that's going to take the value of this environment variable. And I'm also going to create a variable called client secret, which is going to take the value of the Spotify client secret variable. And because this Cordo document is a dashboard, I don't want to include the output from this code chunk in the dashboard, so I'm also going to add echo equals false and include equals false as chunk options. And then back in the Spotify API documentation, I'm going to go to the Getting Started tutorial. And under the Request an Access Token section, it shows us how we can generate an access token by using our client ID and client secret. I'm going to copy and paste this to my clipboard. And then I'm going to load the httr2 package. And I'm going to use the curl translate function. And I'm going to paste in what I had copied from the documentation. And when I run that, I'll be asked if I want to install this package. And we'll say 1 for yes. And once that package is installed, it's going to show us the exact code that we need to use in order to convert this from curl to httr2 syntax. So now I'm going to copy this and replace the curl translate with it. Here, this is where we're supposed to enter our client ID and the client secret. So I'm going to put those in there, and I'm replacing the your client ID with the variable that I created above, and doing a similar process for the client secret. And I'm going to assign this to a variable. So this will generate the access token, but then if I want to be able to access that access token, I'm also going to add in the REST body JSON function. And then we can see what the Spotify access token is by using the $ operator on this object that we created. And then the element is called access_token. Let's run that. And I won't show the value of that variable, but I now have a variable that's called Spotify access token, and it contains a valid access token for the Spotify API. And now we're ready to actually start accessing Spotify data using R. Going back to the documentation, we can see along the left side here all the different types of information that we can access using this API. For this example, I'm going to be using the Today's Top Hits playlist from Spotify. So to get that playlist, the first thing that I need to do is figure out the Spotify ID of that playlist. To find that, I can go to the Spotify web player, and I can go to the playlist of interest, and then the playlist ID is going to be at the top of the URL. So I'll copy that, and I'm going to put that in a new R chunk, define that as a variable called playlist ID. And then along the side here, we have another example that we can just copy and paste and modify as necessary. Copying that to my clipboard and then going back to RStudio And this is where the curl translate function is going to come in handy again. And I'll copy and paste the result, and I'll replace that with the curl translate. I'm going to save this to a variable called today's top hits. And right here, I need to replace this value with the playlist ID. I'm just going to paste that directly in and then remove the definition of the playlist ID variable. This string right here needs to get replaced with our Spotify access token. So I'll use the paste 0 function, and then I'll replace this with Spotify access token. And just like before, after the rec perform function, we'll use the rest body JSON function. I'll paste that here, and now we can run this. And now if we look at the structure of the today's top hits object, it's very long, but all the information is there. And what you do with that information is totally up to you. But as an example of some of the stuff that you can do, if you want to access the names of the songs, you can access the tracks and then items, and then you can index on the position within the playlist. So this will get the first song, and then we can go to track and then name. And this is telling us that the first song on that playlist is called Espresso. If I wanted to know the artist of that song, I could replace name with artists. And when I run that, it only has one element because there's only one musical artist on this song. And that artist's name is Sabrina Carpenter. But if there was more than one artist, that would show up here. But if we want the name of just the first artist, then we could access the first element of the artist list and then extract the name. For each song, you can see all of the information that you can access for that track by going to tracks and then items. So you can see the album that it's a part of, the artist, countries where the track can be played, how long the song is, whether or not the song has explicit lyrics, an ID for the song, how popular the song is, and so on. There's a lot of really cool, very useful information in here. For my example, I want to create a data frame that contains information like the name of the song, the name of the artist, the album art that is associated with the song, how long the song is, and how popular the song is. So this notation that we saw here is fine if you only want to access one song, but it would be a little bit frustrating to have to change this number for every single song in the playlist, which has 50 songs in it. So if we wanted to extract the name for all 50 of the songs, we could use the lapply function. To do that, we would do lapply and then the object that we want to apply the lapply function to, which is going to be today's top hits, $tracks, $items. And then for each item in that list, we want to apply a function that's a function of x, and we want to extract the track name of that element. And if I run that, I get a list. But if I want to have it as a vector, I can also wrap that inside of the unlist function. And if I run line 50 here, now I get a vector with all 50 of the songs. And in order to get this information in a more usable format, you might want to create a data frame of the information that you're interested in. And that's what I'll do. I'm going to create a data frame called top hits df, and I'm going to extract the song name, and I can just paste that right in. I also want the song ID, and I can just change this part right here, and so on and so forth. Once I'm all done, I've got the song name, song ID, artist name, album art, which provides a URL to an image of the album art, track duration measured in milliseconds, and the popularity, which is a value that ranges from 0 to 100. And songs that are being played a lot right now are going to have a popularity closer to 100, whereas songs that are a bit older will probably have a lower value for the popularity variable. Let's take a look at the top hits DF, and this is what it looks like. So far, we used the playlists endpoint, but as we can see here, there are many different endpoints. I'll show one other example that we could use. Under tracks, there's something called audio analysis. And here it says that the audio analysis describes the track's structure and musical content. It includes things like rhythm and pitch. For this example, we'll say that we're interested in the tempo. There's the overall tempo of a track, but there's also sections of the song, and each section also has a value for tempo. That one's a little bit more of a complicated example, so let's use that one. Again, we've got this sample code right here. We'll copy that to the clipboard, and then we'll use our curl translate function again. We'll copy and paste what we get from curl translate and replace the results of curl translate with the relevant code. And here we can see that we're going to need to replace with the Spotify ID of the track. That's equivalent to the song ID variable that we created earlier. But we've got 50 songs in this playlist. And if we want, we can actually loop over all 50 of those songs to get the audio analysis for each one. So I'm going to create a list to store the results, and it's going to be the length of our playlist, which is 50. And then we're going to create a loop that goes from 1 to 50. And for each song, we're going to store our results in something that we'll call audio analysis. And then let's cut and paste that here. We'll need to replace this with the relevant track ID. So here we'll use the paste function and replace this bit right here with the top hits DF song ID for that song. And again, here we need to replace this with our Spotify access token. So just like before, we're using the paste 0 function and then replacing this string with our Spotify access token. And again, like before, after the rec perform function, we use the resp body JSON function to get our results in a more readable format. And then for each song, we want to assign the relevant results to an element in the tempo list. So the ith element of the tempo list is going to be something that looks like this, but the way that we access the tempo is by looking at the sections element and then the tempo. Let's try running this. This will take a little bit longer to run. And if we take a look at the first element of tempo list, we can see what the tempo was for each part of the song. The number of sections for each song might be different. So the first song might have a different length for this vector than the first one. If we want to add the tempo to that top hits DF that we created earlier, we can create a new variable called tempo and then use this syntax here. And if we take a look at the top hits DF, now tempo is a variable. In this video, we learned how to access the Spotify API using R, and we looked at a couple of examples of the sorts of things that you can do using the Spotify data. We mostly used the curl translate function to figure out how to do this, but if you're interested in understanding a bit deeper what each of these functions does, then I have another video about the httr2 package that kind of walks through how APIs work in general and how to use the httr2 package. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I hope you found it helpful.